Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, however you're watching, wherever you're watching, however you're listening, wherever you're listening. It's the Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast, Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast, brought to you by Bet Online AG. Go to Bet Online AG where the game starts. Bet Online Salute Detroit podcast is also brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Go visit the Underdog Fantasy app or go to UnderdogFantasy.com. Put in promo code USC LAFB for a $100 welcome bonus. Underdog Fantasy, where your dreams come true. Madman, we are here. How are you doing today?
Doing well, Coach. Always a pleasure to be with you and talk ball. Hopefully, I don't think the sting of Saturday has worn off for me yet. I don't know about you, so this should be a fun conversation. But hopefully we have a little bit of distance, a little bit of perspective, but that sting is still there. So excited to talk about the past, the present, and most importantly, the future. But always such a pleasure, my friend.
Yeah, and we got to talk people off the cliff. My thoughts were we need to talk people off the cliffs, and who would have thought week 7 we're at a crossroad. But then I also had another epiphany, and my epiphany was this: week 8, if we are 6-2, let's say we beat Minnesota. Week 8, if we're 6-2, do we have the same reaction?
Yeah, you mean if we beat Penn State? Yeah.
No. I'm saying just ideal scenario, right?
Oh, you're saying we beat Minnesota. Let's say we lose to Penn State, then we beat like Maryland, and are we 6-2? Yeah, no, I think that's a great point, Coach. I don't think so. I think it's because it was a loss to Minnesota. No disrespect to Minnesota, but just in the fashion that it was lost. Being an 8.5-point favorite, having control of the game, Minnesota being largely one-dimensional, the breakdowns with the offensive line, the breakdowns with the play calling, wilting again in the second half, much like Michigan. I think all of those factors, is why there's concern within the Trojan family today, and hopefully we try and alleviate as best as we can some of those concerns.
Yeah, before we get deep into the meat and potatoes, and to reach into my southern roots, before we get deep into the pot of gumbo, and to reach into your heritage, before we get deep in the pot of tiki masala.
There you go. Deep in the biryani, absolutely.
Deep in the biryani. There we go. Before we get deep in the biryani. Chicken biryani is actually, before I'm going to go off on a tangent, my favorite Indian dish is chicken biryani.
Oh, my gosh. Biryani. Well, next time you're over, Coach, we're going to do Indian. Last time everybody was over, we sort of had different food. My wife cooked. This time we'll have my mom cook, and then we'll go that way.
Biryani is by far my favorite. I love biryani.
I love
biryani. All right. Anyway, before we get deep into that, I actually want to make a complaint. I don't understand how we get kicked out of the rankings.
Yeah,
I would have took an 18. I would have took a 20. I was expecting to see, honestly, I was so optimistic. I'm like, oh, we'll probably be number 15, 16, work our way back up. We'll probably just miss the playoff because we'll probably get 12 at the end of the season. It's all right. At least we're in the rankings. We're in contention, something to build on. We got booted. But the reason why I'm upset is because it's like Notre Dame loses to NIU, and they're still around, right? Michigan has 2 losses, and they're still around. They're going to say, well, it's Texas and Washington, blah, 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 this and that. I mean, Washington is not a great team this year. You're looking on their past. I just don't understand how we get completely booted. And, a lot of people tell me this, and I just be like, it's whatever. We're still, you have to realize that we are we're still a program. We're still a blue blood. But when people really hate USC. I've seen the light, man. People really hate USC. I don't understand why. I don't understand how you could like Oregon or how you could like Washington, and they're all on the West Coast. Or if UCLA makes a run, you could like UCLA, but you really dislike USC. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. But just to be booted out, I am just dumbfounded. I'm in awe. I do not understand it. I don't know how they got there. It just makes no sense to me.
No, Coach. I was surprised that, if you recall, on our Saturday live show, I had made a reference to where this team would be in the rankings on Monday, and I was right there with you. I thought it was going to be I said 17 on the show, and so I thought it would be kind of 17, 18, at worst, fall 6, 7 spots. I was quite surprised to see this team out of the top 25. It felt like, Coach, we can argue about the bias, and I'll do sort of an argument for bias, and then I'll do an argument against bias, just to sort of put it all out there. USC was an 8.5-point favorite on the road, lost by 7, fell more than 14 spots, right? They went from 11 to unranked. I think technically they're 26th because they're the first team that's unranked right now. So they fell 15 spots. If you look at Alabama as the number 1 ranked team, they were 20-plus point favorites on the road, lost by 5. They fell by 6 spots. So, when you sort of look at it that way, you're kind of like, there might be something to this bias with USC for sure. Now, I think that's the case I think the case against, Coach, is I don't think voters, and because it's human and it's behavioral and it's psychological, I don't think voters simply vote on this particular week. Like, every week is not an independent event on its own. I think what you do in the weeks prior informs you, guides you, rightfully or wrongfully, from an emotional standpoint on how you're going to vote that particular week. Because if you look at Michigan, same situation. They were 10. USC was 11. Michigan fell 14 spots. Michigan went from 10 to 24. USC goes from 11 to 26. What is kind of the common denominator, Coach, with both of those teams? Yes, it was a second loss. So they got penalized now as a second loss. You can't just sort of write off the first loss as kind of a fluke. Okay, there's a deeper problem here with the second loss. So you get a little bit more penalized there. But also, in the case of USC and Michigan, Coach, even when they have won from time to time, it has not looked impressive, right? When you saw Michigan against Minnesota, we talked about that onside kick. When you saw Michigan against Fresno State, when you saw Michigan against even Arkansas State, not impressive. So when they lost, they kind of had the benefit of the doubt even when they won, that it wasn't impressive. The moment you lose, you really hit that cliff. Similar situation a bit with USC, Coach. After that LSU game, Utah State was very impressive, but losing to Michigan, and I think even though came back and beat Wisconsin, a lot of people didn't really consider that a great win. That was sort of an ugly win considering what that first half looked like. And how SC kind of got back in the game in the second half. So now that SC got that second loss, it really sort of snowballed and nosedived for them in the rankings. So there's an argument for, there's an argument against. Either way, though, I thought it was pretty extreme. Felt like the voters woke up on the wrong side of the bed, Coach, and were pretty angry on Sunday because they voted angry.
And it's official. College game day will be in Eugene. And Kenny, he won't be at college game day, but he's going to that game.
Yeah, well, and Coach, I said it was going to be 1 versus 3. Ended up being 2 versus 3, right?
2 versus 3, yeah.
Hard to argue there,
Yeah, so I just, boy, I don't know. I'm just like, come on, guys, at least give us 25. Like, at least let us try, because this is an opportunity. Okay.
Yeah, at least make the game a ranked game. Right,
supposedly, the college football playoff with the expansion is supposed to give opportunities for the best teams, the 12 best teams at that time, and we might have a chance. MIGHT, meaning there's a possibility, right? There's
Absolutely.
a possibility for us. I'm just saying that because they'll kill us in the comments. So I got to be clear about it. There's a possibility that we could be the best 2-loss team when it comes time for playoff. There's a possibility.
Sure.
Right? And it gives us that chance. But now, like, we have to claw all the way to the finish just to get a wink. You know what I mean? Just to get a slight half-sleep, eye-open look at it now. Like, they just eliminated. Like, I feel like at this point in time, I think we're eliminated from the playoffs.
Coach, I mean, it's an interesting take. I disagree because Penn State's ranked 4th. Okay, so if you can come back and win this game, you're going to jump right back from unranked to, say, 16. And then to, say, going 4 spots up in the final 7 weeks of the season is extremely manageable. So I think you get right back in it if you can win this game, just given the fact that Penn State is ranked so high. So that's got to be where the mindset is to be able to recover from here. What I will say is, if USC doesn't beat Penn State, even if USC loses to Penn State by 1 point, but USC loses to Penn State on a game-winning field goal, you can put the nail in the coffin in terms of playoff chances. It's over. The second half of the season at that point, it's going to be just kind of fun in games. There isn't going to be anything meaningful there. So I think there's still a path here, Coach. They're going to have to be flawless. There's no more margin for error. But if they can be, and if they can go clean sheet the rest of the way, I still believe they're going to make the playoff, because teams above are going to lose, and you get to 10-2. And if you can have a resume that includes a win against Penn State and a win against Notre Dame, I think that resume warrants making the playoff. But what the loss to Minnesota did was, even if you lose to Penn State on a fluky play, even if you outplayed them, everyone walks away saying you really won that game, but it was one fluke play, special teams play, bad luck, a winning field goal, lost by 1. Even if you lose by 1, it's done. It's over. No shot at the playoff.
Yeah. I mean, here's the good part about it. Here's the best part out of this whole thing. If we talk about the postseason and how we go from here, we know who's winning the Heisman already, so we don't have to worry about
who is winning the Heisman. Who you got?
Genty.
Yes,
I'm glad you said that.
You said that. Yeah,
the Heisman Trophy is already won. Right, he's going to break Barry Sanders' record. He's going to do amazing things. His backstory is actually really amazing. He played his first 3 years in Italy, and then he moved to Florida.
Yes,
and then he took very minimal NIL, and he got a small raise, and they thought they were going to lose him, but he just decided to stay.
Coach, it's remarkable, and I'll put it this way: can you imagine if Boise State closed that Oregon game? He's the front runner in the Heisman with a team that's 4-1 right now. If Boise State closed that Oregon game, or if they called that play where the Oregon guy flipped it before the end line, I still believe it was before the end line, Coach, he's unanimous Heisman. This is not even close. The race is over if they're undefeated. And I still think there's sort of a window. If Ewers maybe comes back and goes crazy, Milroe sort of bounces back and goes crazy, Dylan Gabriel kind of goes on a hot run, goes crazy. Maybe an Ohio State guy emerges. So I think there's still kind of a window of opportunity for somebody else, but he is the front runner. And if he continues to perform, it's definitely his.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't affect Miller Moss. And I guess he can't be too upset about Nick not getting the invite to New York, because he was just going just to be on TV anyway, because that's Genty's trophy. So, I mean, I guess there's a silver lining in every rainstorm, right? So we'll go off that rainstorm, but we got a lot of work to do. We got to move forward. Back to that preface that we talked about. So we're going into week 7, and we're at a crossroads, right? We have to figure out, where do we go for here as Trojans? How do we get better as a football team? How do we get better as a program? How do we regain national respect? Right? And I asked you some questions at the beginning of the show. I said, if we're going into the game after Penn State, I'm not sure who we play.
Maryland.
If we're going to College Park, right? 6-2, is the reaction the same from the fans? I don't think it is, right? But I think the reaction is because now we have a little bit of doubt, and we're at the point to where we were last year. They had us fooled for a little bit, all right, we can make some stops. Well, if we go back and recap the game, we needed 2 stops from the defense. The defense couldn't get 2 stops. That looked a lot like last year. Lincoln Riley's play calling, he gets into that thing where he starts just passing the ball and makes bad decisions. That looked a lot like last year. We're starting to get into that, oh no, not this again. You know what I mean? But I don't think it's time for execution yet. And the reason why I say I don't think it's time for execution yet, and as much as I know, and as much as I talked to Will the Thrill about this with the UCLA situation and everything like that, I am afraid of a revolving door, because once you create a revolving door, you're no longer able to establish a program. I believe we need to give him time, and we need him to figure it out. I'm going to be his biggest supporter, but if he doesn't figure it out, he's going to have to go, right? But just not right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely, Coach.
And I'm real quick, and I'll give Pat Ritchie. I think he needs 5. I'm sorry, I think he needs 5. I'm just because of the revolving door. And I know you say your 4-year theory, and I understand your 4-year theory, and it makes so much sense. But I think he needs 5. If he can't get it done at 5, he needs to go. But at least he had a full class. He had a chance to do it. He did not get it done. Now we need to go find somebody, and we need to make a splash. And we need to find somebody that works right away. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Coach. I mean, I think it's a great point, and I don't know if we're ready to panic just yet. It was a
we're
tough
panicking.
Loss. I don't know.
We're panicking
because again, Coach. I mean, if they can come back and beat Penn State, all is right with the world for temporarily, right? And so, I think these bigger statements about where we go from here. Let's see where we are in a week. Next Monday night, let's see where we are in a week, because I think if we're 4-2, we're having a very different conversation. And if we're 3-3, we're having a very different conversation. So what I'll say is TBD. Let's sort of perhaps revisit this a week from Monday, because we have this platform and this opportunity to, kind of galvanize and redeem ourselves. I think there's a couple of things that are going on here, Coach. One is you made a really astute point about the defense. And everyone is sort of pointing to 112th last year, 32nd this year. Number of points last year, number of points this year. Number of yards last year, number of yards this year. And obviously, there's been a significant amount of improvement in that way. But this is where, Coach, you need to contextualize your statistics. And the best example there, again, I'm going to do another NBA reference. It's like comparing points per game in today's NBA versus the 90s and the 2000s, right? Like you and I are both LA guys. Like the year that Kobe averaged 35 in 06, that would be the equivalent of like 43 today. So to be able to say 35 today was 35 yesterday, that's not true at all. When you talk about Jordan averaging 37 and 88, that 37 is like 46 today, okay? So you have to contextualize the era that you are in, the environment that you're in. The number of possessions in the NBA has gone up so much that obviously you're going to get more stats. Now, how does that translate to USC's defense? USC's playing in a conference, Coach, where it's a slower paced conference. It's like the reverse phenomena of the NBA. From sort of the 80s and 90s to today, the NBA pace has gotten so much faster. Going from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, the pace has gotten so much slower. So you're getting fewer possessions, right? You're taking more time in between plays. So you don't have necessarily the same opportunity to both score as many points, but also give up as many points, because just the pace of play is slower. So that's why it's sort of problematic. I'm not saying that Lynn hasn't done a really fine job. Obviously, there's been improvement, but where you need to sort of look at it is points per possession. And really sort of critical possessions, are you able to get a stop when you need it? And last year, this team couldn't get a stop when they absolutely needed it. And now this year, it feels like they're starting to fall into that trap where they can't get a stop when they actually need it. So are they better than last year? Yes. But I still think they're only incrementally better than last year, because you have to contextualize all of these statistics. And so that's kind of my one takeaway on the defensive side of the ball, Coach. And on the offensive side of the ball, I think what's getting a little bit lost in translation is how big that Lake McCree injury was.
Yeah.
I mean, because when you talk about his ability to block and, and where is he blocking, Coach? He's blocking at the tackle spots. I mean, he's that chipper. He's helping each tackle. And so the reason this issue wasn't so in your face earlier in the year is because McCree was there. And then that in combination with the fact that McCree was a sure-handed receiver on those seam routes, that opened up the middle of the field for this team in a way that they haven't been able to get yet with his injury. So these edges can now just pin their ears back. They don't have to worry about dropping back. They don't have to worry about, not going gas, full of all gas, no brakes, because they're not really worried about guys on the back end. So I think, we've talked so much about Miller Moss. We've talked so much about Woody Marks. We've talked so much about Zach Branch. We've talked so much about Jacoby Lane. We've been talking about Mekhi Lemon. We talked about Hudson and his spectacular catches week 1. But I think in many ways, Coach, outside of Miller Moss and perhaps Woody Marks, the most valuable player on this offense was Lake McCree. And I think losing him has really now put underneath a microscope the deficiencies of those tackles, and that isn't being talked about enough.
Yeah, and so the question starts to become, what do you do to fix it, right? Because you play a Wisconsin team and you're better than Wisconsin, right? Wisconsin is an average team. I could legit say that this USC team is above average. I'm not saying they're superior. I'm not saying they're elite, but they're above average. You can say, well, they just lost to Minnesota. I firmly said this is the new Oregon State, new Arizona State. You could go and you could sleepwalk in that stadium and you could walk out saying, what happened? It's happened to multiple teams in the Big Ten, from Ohio State to Michigan to Penn State. Like it's happened multiple times. So I'll use it. That's a one-off. We'll just say Minnesota's a one-off. Unfortunately, it shows up on the record. It's a one-off. I think if SC plays Minnesota 10 times, SC wins 9 times out of 10. And we just saw the one time where Minnesota wins. But it's still a blaring situation where we addressed this last year. And it's starting to come back again this year, where Lincoln Riley gets stubborn and he does not want to either accept the issue, or he's either ignoring the issue, or he doesn't care. And those are what actions are showing, right?
Yep.
He's not fixing the edges. And it's like he's not doing anything about it. Now people are calling for the offensive line coach's job. Well, you can't really call for his job because, first of all, he didn't birth the kid. He didn't genetically modify the kid. He did not build a kid. You know what I mean? He's just not good enough. And it's okay. And that's what happened. People just sometimes they're just not good enough. And I don't know if depth-wise they just don't want to rush a kid in, but he's just not good enough. It's not on the O-line coach. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, he's putting them in the situation to do it, but they're not doing anything to solve the problem. And it goes back to those three things. It's either he just doesn't care, he's ignoring it, or he's just flat out stubborn and just doesn't want to fix it. They need to fix that problem. That is the most blaring problem. If it's so obvious, people say, what are they going to do? What is this team going to do on the edge? What is this team going to do on the edge? Like, at some point, you have to tell yourself, this team's going to attack me. I need to step up and do something. It's kind of like the Chiefs. The only thing is the Chiefs has Pat Mahomes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Their attack was awful. He has 24 penalties since last year.
Right.
We know that, but they have Pat Mahomes and a great offensive coordinator. That is where I see the biggest problem. And I think it's becoming a culture cancer. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, I mean, Coach, to your point, there's 3 things you can do if you're Lincoln Riley, right? You can address it with alternative talent, so substitution, right?
Yep.
You bring in someone else at the tackle spots for Page and Murphy. 2, you adjust your play calling and you run more in between the tackles and you don't abandon it as quickly. You have more sort of resilience and more fortitude to kind of stick with it. Or 3, you have to do something formationally, right? So it's substitution, play calling, formations. Those are sort of the 3 buttons you can press. Those are the 3 knobs you can turn. And so let's sort of break that down. I think from a substitution perspective, Coach, I think outside of these 5, I think there's a drop-off in sort of talent and readiness and rawness that I think is going to be tough to sort of throw in one of these backups week 6, game 6 against the number 4 ranked team in the country with perhaps the best pass rush in America, if not the best pass rush in America, one of the 5 best pass rushes in America. I think that's a tall order to throw someone into the fire that way. So I don't think that's viable. 2, it can be play calling. And so this is where we've talked about it. He's got to stick with the run more. He's got to sort of slow the pace. He's got to almost slow his mind a little bit more and stick with the frontline rushes. The problem, though, Coach, is for as physical as Minnesota was on the edges, they were an incomplete defensive front 7. Mm-hmm. Okay, you know, they had average linebackers to below average linebackers. You could kind of get away with, you know, in between the tackle running in a way that I don't think you can get away with Penn State, because I think they have really high quality linebackers. I think that 4-2-5 scheme that they run is very conducive to sort of packing the box. So I think it's going to be tough to keep just kind of running and expecting to get the results that you got against Minnesota. So Substitution, he can't really do. Play calling, you could do, but out of respect for the opponent, probably isn't going to seize you some incredible returns. So now it comes down to formation, coach. And I think that's where he's got to focus here. I think you got to run more 12 personnel. You might even have to run 13 personnel. I mean, a little bit more. I mean, honestly, put a tight end on each edge, but I think you're going to have to run 12 personnel more. And I think you're going to have to stack your receivers a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage. I think you're going to have to sort of crowd the line a little bit more. I don't think you can have these wide splits. I think you're going to have to pack it in a little bit. And I think you're going to have to bring in the tight end. So you create a lot of bodies, a lot of body movement, a lot of congestion. So you're sort of manufacturing a way to slow down that pass rush, through chips, through double teams, but then also through just congestion. You're almost turning into, sort of a bad traffic cop at a construction site. You're just creating congestion and confusion. And I think that's what he's going to have to do. It's going to have to be more 12 personnel. And I think he's going to have to bring in the receivers closer to the line and have much narrower splits.
And I'm not disagreeing with you. The only problem is I don't think he knows how to call plays out of 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All his patterns are 4 receiver patterns, right?
Yep.
Now we're talking 70 protection out of 12 personnel, and that 70 protection now creates a three man route combination. Can he get them open? Yeah, 100%. It's been done for years. They did it forever, right? Bill Walsh made a living out of it. You can even get a 4-man and you just go 60 protection. You just have to be able to know how to slide. And then you could use that extra tight end and you could create that 3-man running back to receivers and the tight end.
And I think, Coach, to your point, I mean, the way I would do it, and you're the X's and O's guy, but I think you have to sort of leverage Woody Marks the way he leveraged Travis Dye 2 years ago. Because if you remember, Travis Dye was one of the leading receivers on that team for the first half of the season. And he actually didn't leverage Travis Dye going horizontal. It wasn't like Travis Dye was running these patterns out in the flat. Travis Dye was actually running up into the trenches and then making a cut where the backers were. And so that's how you sort of almost create that third weapon, beyond the line of scrimmage. So I think you got to run more 12. And then I think you got to see how you leverage Travis Dye and use Woody Marks accordingly, because given his versatility, both as a runner as well as a receiver, I think that's you're doing two things there. You're getting the necessary playmakers down the field that you need. You still don't have 4 wide, but you got 3 options now. But you're also getting, a key playmaker more involved in the offense, and that's never a bad thing. And you're getting the protection that you need.
Yeah, and we could see he ran 12 because he tried to run quarterback sneak with Miller Moss under center, and that was a terrible idea.
Yeah,
that didn't work very well. He looked so lost out there. But I think out of 10 personnel, I think he can get the protection he needs if he starts running more sprint out. And what we are seeing from Miller Moss that he's really good at, and it's a silent good, and nobody really gives him a lot of credit for. He throws very well on the run. He throws very well on the run,
particularly when he's rolling to his right. His strong side. Yep.
Yeah. And so I think they need to get more sprint out, and I think that will get them. That will help them. I think if they run more waggle, so waggle is when you pull the offensive lineman to the side that you're sprinting out, and you seal that backside to get that protection that you need. I think that will work a lot in 10 personnel if you want to keep that 4-man route. But I do agree with you. Play calling and just sitting in the box sitting in the pocket is not working because they're running legit. You know what I think is going on? It's my opinion, and I could be wrong. I think he's still collaborating with Cliff because Cliff is running a lot. His plays that he's running now, in Washington are a little bit more NFL friendly now. He's generating routes. He's running a little bit different route, and I think they're collaborating now. And I think they just don't have time to do it. And I don't think they recruited a O-line to do it. And now that's what I'm saying. I don't even still think they recruited an O-line to do it because Maava is not that guy. He's not a pocket passer. Juju Lewis isn't a pocket passer. So this is a one-off thing. He's doing a good job with him, but he's not doing a good job protecting him because Miller Moss is very good. He's going to go on the first day. Anybody who thinks different does not know football and can't evaluate talent. So I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's very good, but I just don't think he has the time. So I think sprint out is the best thing to work for him. I will flip it over though. I think defensively, we got to come out of the 2 shell until they make us come make us the 2 shell. There's no reason to keep 7 Humphrey, right? Humphrey.
Yeah.
Humphrey.
Well, you mean Ramsey?
Ramsey. I don't know why I
yeah.
said Humphrey. There's no reason to keep Ramsey on the shell. There's no reason to keep him up there. Bring him down the box. We know he's a for sure tackler. We know he's very good. He could play the C gap, right? If he gets any type of lead block, just force everything back into the rest of your help. Like, we got to come out of that 2 shell. Like, make them
Well, see, here's the thing with the 2 shell, coach, and it's a great point. Where it's really going to hurt this week is Penn State's got a 2-headed running back monster in Singleton and Allen. Those guys have some burst, okay? So this is a different running back room than Michigan and Minnesota. And we've talked so much ad nauseum about the 215, the 230-pound back. These guys are a little bit smaller. They're sort of lower to gravity, but they got a burst to the second level. So the challenge, of course, with 2 shell also is if you get these guys starting to run downhill and their ability to accelerate, if you don't come at the right angle, even from your shell spot, I mean, you're going to give up some home run runs, and so and that's something you don't have to worry about as much with the Darius Taylor and a Mullings. With Singleton and Allen, you do, because of just what their running style is. So, I don't know if you're going to you got to make Penn State be able to throw the long ball consistently. They've been very inconsistent with it. Against West Virginia, coach, Aller was lighting it up. Everyone sort of had Penn State as one of the 4 or 5 best teams in the country because they said, well, now if you finally marry this defense with a vertical passing game, this is a very complete team. We haven't seen them come anywhere near the vertical success since West Virginia. So, they got a couple of guys on the outside, Evans, Trey Harrison, a couple of guys that can get open. Clifford was a guy last week against UCLA, had 3 big catches. They've got guys, but there is no consistency. So, again, you're going to have to make them earn it to sort of, force that the 2 shell, the 2 high, because I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's very conducive to the running back room that the Nittany Lions have.
No, 100%. And that's what I'm saying. Like, make teams put you in that shell. You know what I mean? Like, they don't even make teams put them in. And we have a corner that's locking down one side of the whole field. You know what I mean? Like, he's legit. Like, that's another day 1 guy. Like, there's no reason why you can't tell me that this dude's going to the draft. Number 2, help me with it. You guys are good with the names. I just know by their numbers. Number 2, the corner for SC.
Greedy Vance?
No, Greedy Vance is 21.
You're talking about Jalen Smith?
Jalen Smith.
Yeah.
Jalen Smith.
Oh, I thought you said 21. It was 2.
No,
yeah.
Number 2. Jalen Smith.
Jalen Smith's legit. Yeah.
He's taking the whole side of the field away.
Yeah.
Like, you have the ability. And here's the thing. You can run 1 high and you can just run match 3. And match 3 puts you either in cover 1 or you put you in man. Just stay on the top shoulder. And if he runs his route, just convert on him. Like, you have the opportunity. Like, we need it. And now that you're in a 1 shell, you always have the opportunity to add 1 more to the box so you could be +1, which we were not in Minnesota. And that's why the run was popping out. Like, and when we needed a stop, there was no possible way for us to get a stop because we didn't have the number. And you know how I feel about being +1 and having numbers in the box. Once you get numbers in the box, everything changes. So I think we need to come out of a 2 shell. Did he run a 2 shell UCLA last year? Was that his?
Yeah, I mean, it was sort of he did at times. But then it was sort of a little bit of a hybrid, I'll be honest with you, because he had Latu lined up everywhere. And so he was able to sort of manipulate that. He'd go 1 high and, he'd do some things with, kind of the free safety. He'd slide him down in the box. He'd move him around. It was all sort of off of Latu, to be honest with you, because he would always put the free safety on the weak side of Latu. So you never knew whether the free safety was coming or Latu was going to come around or come off the edge. And that was really his bread and butter, was that disguise between Latu and the Murphy twins. And I think, to our point earlier in the year, because he doesn't have that ace in the hole pass rusher, like, I think the key, coach, we talked about offensively, who was sort of a key to this team in McCree and losing him. I think Anthony Lucas is like when we talk about, is this team going to be 6-2 or 8-2 or 10-2? Like, at the end of the year, if we're talking about this team making the playoff, or you and I, as I joke, are a version of Seinfeld or Friends by the end of the year because we don't have much to talk about, invariably, in my mind, it's going to come down to how well Anthony Lucas played. Because I think if he can generate that consistent pass rush, then off of that, I think Lynn does a lot of very unique disguises of different shells with his backers and with his free safety. And so if he can't get that pass rush from that sort of individual talent, he becomes a much more conventional defensive play caller.
I think he is getting it from Lucas. And there's been times where Lucas is just going, and then the quarterback steps up and there's nobody else there. I will tell you this. Nate Clifton and the Wyoming guy, Gavin Meyer are very good run stopping defensive linemen. They could set a hole, and they could force Topic, and they could be really good right there.
Well, there was a reason here, Coach, that Meyer and Clifton, I mean, it was a surprise to us at the start of the season, especially after all of the hype with Bear in the offseason and the NIL and the transfer. I mean, remember, Bear was not even the starter at the beginning of the year in that interior defensive spot. It was Meyer and Clifton. So, to your point, they're absolutely fantastic. But, Coach, this is also where you sort of need that senior leadership to step up in this particular game as well. You know, when you talk about Meyer and you talk about Clifton and you talk about Jameel Muhammad and you talk about Cobb and you talk about Mascarenas Arnold and you talk about Gentry and you talk about Jalen Smith and you talk about Covington and you talk about Greedy Vance, all these guys are seniors, Coach. I mean, outside of Ramsey, and hey, if Anthony Lucas has a great next 6-7 games, he might go pro. He's third year. But right now, only Lucas and Ramsey are scheduled to come back on this defense, Coach. I mean, when you think about it. So this is a very veteran team, and this is where that veteran leadership also is going to need to come through, both in the locker room over the course of the preparation, but also on game day.
This is a veteran. I'm glad you said that. You just magnified a very good point, right? This is a veteran team, but totally. What's the problem with this veteranship of this team? What's the one problem about this team being veterans? Do you know?
You tell me, Coach.
None of them are 4-year SC guys. Not one of them that you said is a 4-year SC guy. Not one of them is a guy that is a 4-year SC guy. And I get they all go to SC, and then all of a sudden, from Travis Dye to Caleb Williams to every single person, there's a few that come and they leave, and that's fine. But the percentage of those guys are so small. But there's a few that come here and they be like, this is a really good place to be. Like, you hear it, like you hear these guys say, this is a really good place to be.
Right.
Why do you think Gentry stayed? Right. Why do you think all these guys? You don't think Anthony Lucas was getting his door beat in, trying to get him to go somewhere else?
Right.
100%. Like but they're veteran leaders, but they're all pieced together. Yeah, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like me walking into your job for a project, and I'm like, all right, well, I'm here to consult. I'm here to help you get through this project. You know what I mean? But
you're not an operator. You're a consultant. You kind of give your analysis, and then you're gone, man. You're McKinsey. You're Bain. You're BCG. You know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I don't have the core foundation of your company, so you're just like, all right, well, let's just get this dude through the project and let's get him out of here. And I deal with that.
This is where it gets interesting, too. Coach, to your point, and you made up a phenomenal point. This is why, to me, this year is so critical. And I've always said, look, I'm gonna wait until the end of next year to give Lincoln his report card. I think he warrants the 4 years, and then we'll sort of make an assessment. But here's where it gets tricky, Coach, because if you don't make the playoff this year, right, that will be, if you get one more loss. If this team goes 9-3 and plays in whatever is the Big Ten equivalent of the Holiday Bowl, because we gotta remember, right? There's no more like, or we still have the alignment with the Bulls for one more year. I can't keep track, but if this is a 9-3 Holiday Bowl team, I think most people would say this was kind of a disappointing year. You know, like they were right where they kind of were, but underperformed a bit. Now, if you go into year 4, you're Lincoln Riley. After, 2 subpar years, let's call it, after the first year of kind of fool's gold, people are saying, look, this is a make it or break it year. Are you going to rely on all those freshmen next year, Coach, defensively? I mean, are you going to be relying on Fountain and Abasari and Shelby and all of those guys when it's a gotta have it year? Or are you going to go back and really raid the portal to try and get the immediacy of results to be able to get that instant gratification? That's where it gets interesting, right, Coach? When it's a gotta have it year, right? Do you have the patience? Look, I'll give you an example from across town that I think you know really well. I mean, think about Rick Neuheisel, for instance. UCLA coach. The last game, as UCLA coach, he lost 50-0 to SC, right? So everyone loves Rick Neuheisel on this show for sure. Rick Neuheisel thought he had one more year, and so he redshirted Brett Hundley because he knew that Brett Hundley, it was better for Brett Hundley to be redshirted his freshman year for his own development, for his own maturation, because he thought he had one more year. And guess what? He didn't make it to the next year. Hundley was his guy. And Hundley beat SC 3 times in a row as a starting quarterback. All of that success could have been Rick Neuheisel's, but he didn't get the extra year. So, and there's plenty of examples of that, not just at UCLA, but all over the country. So if you're Lincoln Riley and next year is a gotta have it year, are you going to stay true to we're going to develop from within organically with these sophomores and whatnot? Or are you going to go raid the portal again, Coach? And does it become kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy? Is it just, is it this game of quicksand?
I think it becomes like addiction, though. I think it becomes an addiction. I think you're like, oh, we got to do it one more time. We're fine. Right. We're fine. And then all of a sudden, oh, we got to get back. We got to do it again. Next thing you know, it's like now you're itching and you got to have it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we got to stay in the portal. I think that his portal year should have been last year. But he came in instantly and just raided the portal, and he never created anything with youth. Now he never has any youth, and now it's every year. Oh, we got to go get in the portal. We got to go get in the portal. We got to go get in the portal. That's fine, but now when are you ever going to get that jail? When are you ever going to get that camaraderie? When are you ever going to get that, man, I love playing for that team. Like, that's my brother. Like, we came up together. You'll never get that. And I think that's the issue. When you really look deep at these teams that are winning, these teams have that in their core.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you might have like the quarterback, but the Oregon guys, they have it in their core.
You think Alabama. So, Coach? You think it's with Oregon? I mean, I think what I'm seeing at the start of the year right now is because they've bought so many players, I think the chemistry isn't right. And I'm not saying it can't get there by the end of the season, but I think that's one of the reasons why they've sort of struggled out of the gate. Even though they're undefeated, they've looked unremarkable. I think it's starting to turn with that Oregon State game was a great performance, blew the doors off UCLA, sort of moving forward there. But it felt like the chemistry was missing at the start of the year, to your original point, because they bought all these guys.
Yeah, that is true. That was a bad example. You're right. But Ohio State, they got their core guys. Yep. Alabama, they have their core guys. Who else is up there at the top?
Georgia, yeah.
Georgia has their core guys. Even Michigan has their core guys. Like, they're not the greatest this year, but they have guys who sat it out and go through. And they might come back next year like, all right, we'll fix this. Like, let's just get a chance to fix this. Like, they just need a core. I'm not saying stay out the portal. You can't live like that in today's world, right? Like, you have to be able to do it. But
otherwise, you're Dabo, right? I mean, at that point, right?
And so, yeah, 100%. I'm just saying, like, just create a core of guys who's been through it together. So when new guys come in, they either adapt or they just get kicked off, right?
So, Coach, it's a really great point. What do you think? And you've talked about this. You've touched on this in past months, even in the offseason and whatnot. So I'm going to ask you the question again, given everything that you know, as we're evolving in this new world of the portal and NIL, what's the right mix every year? Like, is it 50-50? Is it, 75-25? What is the right mix to say this allocation of players I want from the transfer portal and this allocation of players are going to be homegrown, and I'm okay with the learning curve. I'm okay with the mistakes because it's going to be future dividends. But what is that mix given the immediacy of fan bases, given the impatience of athletic directors, given, all of the pressures of needing to win right away? What does that mix look like in your opinion?
So realistically, I say it's a sliding scale, right? And I say you start off 70-30 portal, right? You go 70% portal, 30% high school. right? The next year, you want to start moving. You want to go 60-40. Year 3 should be 50-50. And then by year 4, that 60% should be your guys you recruited.
Right.
And that 40% should be portal guys, and it goes 70-30. And then you get to like Alabama, Georgia's of the world, who's like 90-10, right? The goal is to get to 90-10.
You know what's so interesting? It's in many ways, Coach, it's almost like the journey of an entrepreneur. It's almost like kind of the venture capital model, because you got to stick with it and you got to be able to have the discipline even when you have a bad year, because that sounds really good, but that assumes that you sort of have a winning record every year, or you at least met or exceeded your expectations as coach every year, so you have the next year to be able to do it. The key to your point where it becomes addictive is, let's say you have a down year and now you need to kind of recover, your perception, your brand, your competence that following year. Are you still going to be sort of that methodical 10% year over year, or are you going to sort of overhaul and clean house? I think that's the interesting behavioral element of all of this.
And there's also, and that's just numbers. And you know what happens when you go with numbers and statistical things and analytics. You know what happens with that, right? You never put in the human error, right? And then, so like, how many people left that you need to replace right away, right? Anybody in the front O-line or the defensive line, if they leave, you got to replace them right away. So you're going to go jump in the portal, right? The best team to look at to do it, because they've been doing this for years, is Kansas State. Kansas State is a JUCO-heavy football program. They get a lot of JUCO guys, and they've always been successful. And so however they do it is the best way to do it. And the way they do it is similar to that. I just gave round numbers, but it's similar to that. And they always say we always replace our O-lineman with JUCO guys. We got to go get a skill guy. We need one right now. We'll go get him out of JUCO. So those guys are a lot of JUCO guys, but they still have their core guys who are homegrown guys, and that's how it works. So it analytically sounds great. You're right. Something goes wrong, you panic. All of a sudden, you throw your numbers off, and then you try to recover your numbers, and then things like that. Oh, there's a bunch of error to it, but the goal is to get to 90-10 like the Georgias and the Alabamas of the world, right? You lose a couple of guys, but you still got such a big core that it really doesn't affect you.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah, so that's the best way to go about it. But, Jamal, at the end of the day, I think we're okay, right? It's not what we planned. It's not what we had in mind, but I will say this. I think Labor Day weekend kind of fooled us. Because if you look at all of us across the board, every last one of us who has a podcast, every last one of us who had a write, who had some type of article out, who had something written, we all said 9-3. We said a good year will be 11-1. We'll take 10-2. We're on pace to what we thought they were going to be.
Yeah, no, I mean, I had them 9-3, Coach, at the start. I mean, if you recall, in the offseason, I said 9-3, and you were like, Jamal, really? 9-3? We got to talk about that. You remember? You know,
yeah.
I had them 9-3 the whole time. So,
and I had 10-2.
They're right on track. Yeah.
And they are where they thought they were going to be. And actually, my brother made a good point, and he was like, even when you were there, you guys always lose a game you're not supposed to lose. And I don't know what it is about SC that does that. And they've been doing that
for Hollywood. Yeah.
They've been doing that for hundreds of years. They always lose a game they're not supposed to lose. But
here's where, Coach, it's interesting, because I completely agree with everything that you said. And we are sort of on track. The two things that make you nervous is A, again, how they lost, right? That's the concerning part. B, is Lincoln and Lynn going to make the adjustments necessary? Yeah, and there's a little bit of anxiety there because Lincoln is so stubborn. And truth be told, Coach, Lynn hasn't had to deal with a ton of adversity as a defensive coordinator the last couple of years. You know, everyone last year was just so happy at the improvement. They weren't really necessarily focused on record or game results in the same way as they are this year. Third, and here's the deeper question, Coach, did they drop one game they weren't supposed to, or did they drop two games they weren't supposed to? And if it's two games they weren't supposed to, now we got a systemic issue, because I go back to it. Michigan's a big name. They're defending national champions, but this is an 8-4 football team. It might even be a 7-5 football team. This is not going to be a top 25 team at the end of the year. So did they lose one they weren't supposed to? Or I think it's two that they weren't supposed to, and we're just camouflaged by the name, but we don't realize that was actually a very low to mediocre team.
If that's the case, then we're looking at an 8-4 season. You know what I mean? Like, because we haven't, you know what I mean? But I do think after we get over the Penn State hill, we just have to play good football and sound football, and we'll be able to at least get to Notre Dame and be prepared for Notre Dame. That's my opinion. So the Notre Dame game is going to be very huge, and the way the season is going, you never know. We might get a shot to play in the Big Ten championship. You don't know what Oregon's going to do, right? Penn State is known for losing.
They're
all
going to play each other. That's the benefit, right? The unfortunate part of both of these losses are both conference losses, right? So you got 2 in the L column in the conference, but Oregon plays Oregon State. Oregon plays Ohio State. Ohio State plays Michigan. We play Penn State. Everyone's going to sort of play everyone there. And if everyone everyone sort of holds serve at home, per se, then it's going to come down to perhaps some interesting tiebreak scenarios. So, again, I still think there's a lot to play for. And in terms of the big picture questions, Coach, we'll leave it with this. It's all TBD for me. Let's see how this Saturday goes. And then depending on that, we'll decide whether or not we need to have some big picture questions.
Well, Saturday, I'm interested to see, because Saturday they play at 12:30.
Yep.
that means we'll be live at like 4:45.
Absolutely. So Saturday evening, boss. I think we'll know. We'll know what we need to know Saturday evening.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. Yeah. So I think we're okay, Jamal. I think we're like I was saying. I think where everybody thought we were going to be. I understand they don't like the loss. Okay, but who is the number 3 going to be to? And I understand you already said that. Who's the number 3? It's okay. Like Aaron Rodgers said that one year, relax, RELAX. It's okay. Let's just figure it out. Let's just get better from here. Let's hope he gets better, and let's hope the adjustments are made, and let's see good, clean football for the next month or so until we get to Notre Dame, and let's figure out Notre Dame, and let's try to work our way into the playoff. It's not where we wanted to be, but we're okay. Things happen. Yeah. Let's get back up again. Let's
excited to break down Penn State in detail with you on Thursday, Coach. With Ryan, it should be a great one.
That's going to be a good one for sure. Definitely. You got anything else before we get out of here?
Oh, another great one, Coach. We find a way. It is always a lovely conversation to be had.
Definitely. It's a good one. Hey, guys, if you guys want to check out any more LA football, we got the LAFB Football Network. That's LAFBfootballnetwork.com. Go over there. You can check out the Rams, the Chargers, and the other team across town. And like we said before, we got some Lakers coverage coming and Dodgers coverage coming to the LA football. Is going to change it to the LA Fan Base Network. I don't know if Ryan wants to
There you go. And just Coach, just to clarify, love everything you said. It's LAFBnetwork.com. No football network. Yeah, you said LAFBfootballnetwork.com. No, all good. We just don't want to send people and get those 404 messages, on the internet and say, hey, man, what kind of Ponzi scheme you guys running over here at LAFB?
LAFBnetwork.com to get your Rams, Chargers, and the other team across town. Future Lakers and Dodgers coverage. You get to see the great article that the Madman wrote today about where the Trojans are now. Where do we go from here? That's a really good article. You get in the zone when you write. I just want to let you know that. and if you guys want to get into fantasy football, check out our Desai guys. Tad Desai and Amr Desai. I'm there, Jamal. I'm getting it. They're also
it's there. Biryani reference at the beginning, Amr at the end. I mean, Coach, your honorary Indian has been complete.
They gave it to me a long time ago. Just to let you know, the Desai guys say I'm honorary. No, but definitely check those guys out. Those guys are great. You'll get a lot of good hot takes from our man, Tad Desai. Don't forget about going to betonline.ag. Go to Underdog Fantasy, underdogfantasy.com. Put in promo code USCLAFB to get everything you need. You get a $100 match and get into fantasy. Pick five players, over, under. Simple as that. Man, we're out of here. We get to get at it on Thursday. We get to talk Penn State. This is going to be a good one. Another pageantry game. So we get to get it done. I'll see you Thursday, man. Get some sleep.
Thank you, sir.
You guys know how it goes. Live free. Fight on.